Welcome to Activism Munich. My name is Zan Raza. I'm delighted to announce our guest today, independent filmmaker, journalist, activist, and founder of the Empire Files, Abby Martin. Abby, it's delighted to have you on today.
So good to be here. Thank you so much.
So for those that missed out, Abby Martin was in Munich a couple of months ago, and she took part in an event with Jill Stein and Glenn Greenwald. So in case you've missed that, go to our YouTube channel and check it out. It's called Global Issues and Context. So Abby, let's get straight to the interview. Talk about Empire Files. Why was it shut down recently?
Right. So this all goes back to the sanctions on Venezuela. Even though there was coup attempts against Venezuela and regime change efforts on behalf of the U.S. ever since Hugo Chavez and then subsequently Maduro obviously has been in power since the late 90s. Sanctions weren't actually employed until the Obama administration, when Obama randomly declared Venezuela a national security threat in 2015. So that's when it started to become a little bit more difficult for Telesur to operate. As we know, Telesur was created as a joint venture by Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez to try to counter that corporate media narrative from the U.S. and Western powers to frankly overthrow their country's governments, as we know that the corporate media is weaponized to do. So fast forward to the Trump administration, when Trump really has ramped up these sanctions, Zen, to the point where once Maduro won re-election earlier this year with 6 million votes, I mean, we're talking about 6 million people in a country of 20 million. That's pretty significant. But unfortunately, according to Trump, as well as the right-wing opposition, those people chose the wrong candidate. So what does the U.S. do when people, vote a different way than the U.S. wants? Well, they slap debilitating sanctions on them. So, food and medicine is just that much harder to come by already in a country where it's just extremely difficult to live, to get average goods, et cetera. So the U.S. has clamped down on that, and now there's sanctions that are more severe than any country in the entire region since the 1980s, when we were waging that full-blown bloody war against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. So today, Telesur has become increasingly difficult to pay contract journalists around the world that work for them, independent contractors like Tarika Lee, like me. I like to say that this is kind of a happy happenstance, a happy coincidence, let's say, of the consequences of the latest sanctions, that Empire Files, which is a really, really challenging, critical show that obviously investigates the underpinnings and machinations of empire, is now just severed completely and unable to operate. So now we have, we're trying to raise funds via GoFundMe, via Patreon, and it's really a shame that journalism is so abysmal in this day and age that now we have to beg for funds to keep the project alive.
So you touched on Venezuela. Let's dig deeper into this for a second. Can you talk about the interventions that happened in the 2000s? And also, is the US intervening, putting aside economic sanctions, even today with the CIA or some other sort of operations?
Yes, it's shocking. I mean, you have back in 2002 when Hugo Chavez was kidnapped at the barrel of a gun, of course, by Bush administration backed opposition figures there. And then you see this happen time and again. Of course, that didn't last, but we saw the opposition's hand pretty revealed pretty quickly back then when they wanted to privatize the oil immediately and completely throw out the Constitution that was supposed to build up these people's powers and social movements that we've seen throughout that tenure. So fast forward to several attempts that the U.S. linked with the U.S.-backed opposition in Venezuela has tried to overthrow Maduro. Telesur has actually been a target throughout these coup attempts. One back in 2015 was supposed to blow up the Telesur headquarters in Caracas. That was thwarted, thankfully. Then you see just recently, after Maduro got reelected, where actually there was a drone assassination attempt, C4 explosives attached to drones that were going to blow him up live on air. Now, you found out after this happened that there was actually a coup attempt linked to Miami plotters, as well as the Colombian departing President Manuel Santos, that actually told a room full of U.S. business leaders before he left power, Maduro's time is numbered. You had right-wing pundits on live TV saying that they were privy to meetings conspiring to do this. And so, this going along with just the constant state of violence, these violent guarimbas that we were embedded in that you can see on the Empire Files, just what the protesters do to stoke the violence, and create this humanitarian call. It's a very cynical plot, and it's not stopping. And you have to wonder, the U.S. does not go down without a fight. It doesn't forgive and it doesn't forget. And we have to just imagine that they're thinking of something next to subvert the democratic processes of Venezuela and take that oil under the ground, which is the largest reserve in the world.
Let's switch topics here and focus on media, in specific social media. This year, Alex Jones was completely shut down by the big social media giants. Just last week, Facebook removed around 800 pages and accounts before the midterm election. What is your assessment of these actions? Let's start with Alex Jones.
Yeah, so, a lot of people here are cheering on the kind of coordinated purge of Alex Jones under the pretense that he's very dangerous. I don't see how Alex Jones is actually more dangerous than, let's say, Fox News, which gins up hatred and hysteria against Muslims, brown people, and obviously fosters that kind of support for military interventions on a daily basis that cost the life of millions of people. So I just find it a little bit odd that that's what they're going on. What I feel like this has been started with a proper not thing before the actual elections with Donald Trump. They started to put this out in the narrative that Russian bots, that Russian trolls, and that Russian propaganda and actors that simply mimicked the actions of Russian propaganda were fomenting radical discontent, were sowing discord, and were causing a disruption of the fundamental, the sacred fundamental notion of our democracy, and really impairing that. And so you had actually a Senate Judiciary Committee late last year beg Google, Facebook, and Twitter to drop a mission statement to prevent the foment of discord and to purge basically these institutions online. So what have we seen since that has happened? Well, over the course of the last year, we saw Google acquiescing to the government before there was even a law in place that preemptively backpaged state media, changed their algorithms. We have all this flurry of criticism of China working with Google to censor there. Well, we've already done it here. Google already did that for the state without there even being a law to mandate that happening. So that happened. Then you look at Facebook, and I mean, you have Mark Zuckerberg not only working with lobbyists that are the top GOP donors and backing of Brett Kavanaugh, the serial predator that's now going to be serving in the Supreme Court, but you have Mark Zuckerberg willingly working with conservative neocon outlets like the Weekly Standard that is now supposedly the purveyor of fact-checking on Facebook. We already know that they were completely willing to work with the Israeli government to shut down 95% of Palestinian Facebook pages. And so now what we're seeing is a mass banning and mass purge, where just a couple days ago we saw 800 more pages and accounts blanketly removed. There is no ability to reinstate these pages. What was the premise that they removed them? Well, they said that they were mimicking bot and spam activity. So why is BuzzFeed and Huffington Post still up if this is really about clickbait and spam? I mean, come on, let's be real. When you look at what the pages that were actually banned, a lot of them were police accountability pages, anti-media, one of the pages that has been promoting our work for a long time, a lot of anti-imperialist pages. I mentioned the coup attempt against Nicolas Maduro. Just a couple days after that, Zen, Venezuela Analysis, which is not affiliated with the state at all, was removed from Facebook. Telesur, what the Venezuelan news agency that we were selling our show to, that got arbitrarily removed from Facebook. These are two outlets that will give you that outside perspective that people need when we're talking about regime change efforts on behalf of the Trump administration against sovereign nations like Venezuela. So I just find it not just a coincidence that these pages were removed right when there was just a vacuum of noise, a vacuum of news about this really detrimental event. So we're in a place right now where we're wading through complete censorship, purges that are happening on a daily basis. And this is, you see people say, oh, it's private corporations. They can do whatever they want. You violate their terms of service, fine. That's not true. These private corporations are working with government agencies and think tanks that are actually stacked with CIA officials and actual military contractors. I mean, if, in the case of Facebook, they're working with an institution called the Atlantic Council that is literally stacked with Bush war criminals and Iraq war architects. So it gets a little bit more murky once you realize the players behind the game that are making these coordinated decisions that actually, at the end of the day, are purging anyone outside of that centrist bipartisan foreign policy consensus. So anyone too extreme, and really, we know the ultimate targets here is the left and anti-war voices.
You know what surprises me, Abby, is the fact that they knew what Alex Jones was saying. For example, if we take that case of Alex Jones, they knew what he was saying since a very long time. Why now? The timing is important. It says a lot about the agenda behind. Because it's not like he said Sandy Hook just recently and then they banned him. That would somehow make sense, you know. He said that a couple of years ago, many years ago, and he's been saying stuff since many, many years on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. He had a huge following. So that's where I asked myself, as long as you could milk the cow, it was fine. You know, as soon as the pressure started from the state, they switched around, and now they're purging these pages. So I want to get to the solution part of this. What should people like Activism Munich, non-profit independent media outlets do at this point in time? What solutions or alternatives or ideas do you have in mind how we could protect ourselves from these acts of censorship?
Yeah, and I wanted to just follow up really quickly with what you said. I mean, this is a really good point that, they knew that Alex Jones was doing these things. They were profiting grossly off of these algorithms that just, would show you videos like Alex Jones if you're trying to find actual truth about these matters. So they were fine with that, and they were fine with those algorithms. What worries me, and for people to think that I'm hysterical and saying, oh, what makes you think that they would go after you? You're not violating the terms of service. Chris Murphy, who's a sitting senator from Connecticut here, said InfoWars is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to sites that need to be taken down that are tearing our country apart. And as I mentioned, Zen, in our amazing interview from Activism Munich in Munich, Germany, I was written up in the intelligence report about Russian meddling as someone who was fomenting radical discontent in this country. So I understand the language that can be used to shut down people like me, and frankly, you in America. I mean, we don't know where this is going to go. What can people do? So my whole thing is, look, we bought in to these agencies. We thought that they were going to be a reflection of the egalitarian nature of the internet. Once we bought in, we put all our content on them. We thought that it was going to be free and fair and neutral. And so here we are, where we've put all of our work into Twitter, into Facebook, and we've worked countless hours doing this. So what can we do? Well, we certainly can't plead them to keep it up online. What we can do is just create new networks, decentralize this content, and take it back to the streets. Go super grassroots and underground, just like people used to when COINTELPRO was permeating throughout all activism in the U.S. I mean, we need to basically just take it back, take it to zines, podcasts, really, really super grassroots, where we are taking this critical media directly to the people and no longer counting on algorithms that can just make it go dark online. I know that might not be what people want to hear, but unfortunately, that's kind of the reality here. So we need to get up out of off our butts and really get involved, start networking, and get active in your community to take this media straight to the people and start organizing just like we used to.
So let's get back to the Empire Files. You guys were working on a documentary on Gaza. Could you talk about that?
Right. So one of the things that we're supposed to do when we get enough funding is finish a documentary that we've been putting together on the Great March of Return. So people who know a little bit about Palestine, obviously, there's the West Bank, which is under complete military law, martial law. People are just under brutal military occupation there. The checkpoints, the atomization of the West Bank, and the increase of illegal settlements. That's a horror show on its own. Gaza has been kind of a surplus of refugees have been thrown into this open air prison, and I think that that's actually putting it a little bit too kindly, because in prisons, people aren't just people have potable water. Let's just say that. So in Gaza, it's under a brutal military siege and a blockade where I can't even think of anywhere else in the world that refugees will be shot if they are attempted to leave via boat. So we're talking about a place with 2 million people living there. Almost 2/3 are refugees, ethnically cleansed from land that they live just mere miles away. They cannot leave. The Israeli military controls every single aspect of their lives. They count calories of the food that's coming in. So what are Palestinians doing as a response to this? As a response to not having, more than 2 hours of electricity a day, not having potable water, having running sewage through their streets, not being able to build, not having construction materials. They are protesting. They are putting their lives on the line to go out to the alleged border fence. We know it's not a border fence, it's just a mere fence, again, dividing their own land. But they go up to this fence then every Friday since March 30th, and they've been putting their lives on the line. And what has Israel done as a response? They have wounded with live ammunition more than 18,000 people, and they have killed more than 205 people. And we're not just talking about border clashes like people read in the newspaper. We're talking about Israeli snipers perched up hundreds of yards away from this fence, putting people in the scopes of their sniper lens and pulling the trigger. And not just pulling the trigger, but getting authorization from their generals. Can I kill this child? And they say yes. And so we're seeing journalists executed. We're seeing medics, amputees, and kids. Kids are being executed every week. And there is just a complete shocking silence from the entire world's community about the fact that there is a bloodletting, an ongoing massacre of unarmed protesters. And they want to say, oh, it's Hamas, it's Hamas. I'm sorry, that's outrageous. Anyone who knows anything about what Israel says knows that everything in Gaza is considered a Hamas target. And there was just a study that came out that said actually not one protester who's been executed by snipers has been armed. So that's a really, really serious problem when the world just turns a blind eye to the fact that Israel is executing children on a daily basis at this border's end. So we are putting together a video, a documentary. We hired a team of journalists from Gaza to put this together and risk their lives showing what is actually going on camera. I mean, you can see a lot of this is happening on camera. So what these Palestinian journalists told me is they begged me to tell their message to the rest of the world. And they said, we don't want to die. We love life. Why do people think that we want to die, Abby? And I said, this is really important. We need to share your message because a lot of people paint Palestinians as a death cult full of martyrs who want to be in a mass suicide cult. I mean, it is absolutely despicable, the dehumanization around the world of Palestinians who are trying to do what every human being wants, to live and to love their family and to live a full life, and to be healthy and happy. So it is absolutely disgusting. And I just hope that the world will wake up. And I hope this documentary does a small part in doing that.
So how can people support Empire Files? You talked about it a little bit. Could you go into more detail about how people could support you at this point and even going forward?
Yes, so we launched a GoFundMe campaign. So it's a GoFundMe, Keep Empire Files going on that. And then we have a Patreon where people can donate monthly. And we also have a Bitcoin going on. So if you want to look at all the different avenues that you can help us out, you can go to theempirefiles.tv. That's theempirefiles.tv. And you can look at the banner there for the many options that you can become a monthly or just one-time donor. And we have different tiers of prizes for people who want to support us. But I encourage everyone to check out Activism Munich as well. And we just need to keep collaborating and building each other up because our voices are very important, Zen, and these stories are crucial to get out there.
Abby Martin, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Zen, for having me.
And thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to donate so we can continue to operate as a nonprofit and independent media outlet. My name is Zen Raza. See you next time.